Well, I started this out by saying good morning, but I think the time has flown, so we're at this afternoon. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak this afternoon. I've come to speak with you regarding my opposition to SB 302 for three reasons, and I will try to be direct. The first is, as you've noted, I live in the Central Sands. I live in Coloma. And we've heard, although you didn't get it named, a bit about Coloma already, because Coloma was the place of Perrier. And it was, in fact, the McCann Springs that stimulated Act 310. So I, too, appreciate the review of that 10-year-ago episode. I also need to tell you that people in central Wisconsin have serious water problems. This legislation is pouring salt into an already deep and painful wound. Secondly, I would like to speak about the fact that 302 handicaps the DNR to carry out its constitutional charge to protect the waters of Wisconsin. And third, I would like to speak to the fact that it challenges every citizen's right to hold property and to be able to know, talking about certainty, the value of that property in the state. So let me begin. Groundwater is an everyday problem for the residents of the Central Sands. We have serious water problems, both in water quality and water quantity. Unlike the rest of Wisconsin, we have over 3,000 high-capacity wells in our neighborhood. The number of the requests for new high-capacity wells in this area of Wisconsin has increased dramatically, as has already been referenced multiple times today. To give you an idea of the concentration of high-capacity wells in the Central Sands, I direct your attention to the map that's at the back of your packet, and it's this one. Many of you have seen it before. It represents the area of the Central Sands. The red line is showing where the Central Sands Plain exists. The dots in the center of the picture show you where the high-capacity wells are. The caption at the top relates the years in which those wells were drilled, to give you an idea of how much we have pump going on. I'd like to point out, because it's been mentioned, that Act 310 identified the management areas within the state. This is not one of them. The two areas of the state that are identified by Act 310 are in the eastern part of Wisconsin, in the Brown County area and down near Waukesha, Racine, and Walworth. However, one would, and I certainly do question, why this area of the Central Sands was not included originally in 310 as a groundwater management area, particularly since it was this area of the state that was behind or initiated 310 to begin with. One would have to ask, and I certainly am, why it was left out. As I'll speak to shortly, since this is one of the areas that are subjected to higher environmental scrutiny with regard to the permitting of high-capacity wells. I am claiming today that SB 302 will make our groundwater problems in the Central Sands worse, not better. If we have many competing water users in the Central Sands, again, which has been mentioned before, including vegetable and fruit growers, municipality, riparian property owners, and recreational users. And recently, two new enormous groundwater users have come to the Central Sands: large-scale dairies and the frac sand mining business. Both of these are high users of water, and they have, unlike the farmers, the potato and vegetable growers, are going to be using it 12 months out of the year. I think the Heartland Farm folks spoke to the issue that pumping for potato and vegetable growing is a short period of the 12 months. These other two users are going to be 12-month users, which will be a new impact on the Central Sands that we have not felt before. For several years, I have been part of building a coalition in central Wisconsin with residents committed to addressing the stress on our groundwater aquifer. And again, this has been mentioned earlier this morning. The potato and vegetable growers, lake residents, cranberry growers, and more recently, those seeking to preserve Wisconsin woodlands have all been part of this group. I've been part of the task force, maybe I'm not on the task force, but met with the task force as part of the Central Sands Water Action Coalition that's been mentioned multiple times this morning. The common goal is to find a solution to our aquifer problems in the Central Sands. Our properties and our businesses are dependent upon the water. Again, mentioned multiple times. I don't believe that SB 302 does anything to help. In fact, I feel that it hinders our opportunities. In June, Motion 375, which hasn't been mentioned much this morning, was attached to the legislature's budget bill. This amendment was to provide a year, upon compromise I should point out, a year to work on Wisconsin's groundwater challenges. Now, 2 months later, SB 302 has appeared on the scene. It has snatched our opportunity for a local solution to our already difficult problem. It presents us with a complete disregard for the work going on in the Central Sands to develop a solution for our Central Sands groundwater problems. Moreover, the construction of SB 302 did not include any input from those affected most, the citizens of the Central Sand Plain. As I note, I'm a member of multiple citizens groups working currently in Central Wisconsin on groundwater. None of those groups were consulted or contacted, as far as I know, in the construction of this motion, or this bill. Not the Central Sands Water Action Coalition, not the Waushara County Lakes Council, not Marquette County Lakes, not the group that's working with Representative Krug on a groundwater task force to try to find a local bipartisan solution to our groundwater problems. SB 302 impacts our future, our children, our water, yet no one knocked on our door during its preparation. This feels very much like the haves in southeastern Wisconsin telling the have-nots in central Wisconsin, you don't have a problem, you don't need to worry about water. Southeastern Wisconsin does have a problem. We realize that they do have water issues, but nothing like the 3,000 high-capacity wells pumping dry our aquifer in central Wisconsin. Again, I direct your attention to the map. I've also included photos at the back of the testimony illustrating some of the problems with the lakes, Pleasant Lake, Huron Lake, and Patrick's Lake. Secondly, I'd like to speak to how SB 302 handicaps the DNR. Again, this has been referred to multiple times today, but I'd like to point out a few things that concern me. It does so by limiting the environmental review process. It's been said that this will not change, but clearly there must be some stimulus for this bill to change what's currently going on, or why would we be sitting here today discussing it at all? So I find that a bit of a puzzle. Secondly, it does so by excluding any kind of evaluation of the replacement, reconstruction, and well transfers. Again, Eric Ebersberger pointed out this morning that that is already happening. This bill wouldn't change anything, but it makes me concerned that we're looking at specifically putting into legal language that we wouldn't ever be able to look at these wells, or that they would be able to avoid environmental review. And in some ways, I feel this smacks of Western water regulation. The first in are the ones that have the water forever, and those that come later, new businesses that would come to Wisconsin, would have to be second in line. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to that sort of thinking, but I think we should be explicit if that's the goal in doing so, and be clear about it. Number 3. The time limits, I won't address those again because they've been already mentioned. Only to say that in Adams County we've had 169 new permits, in Marquette 70, and Waushara 118 in just the last 3 years. If the goal is to review and protect Wisconsin waters, then adequate review time is essential to get that job done. To expect DNR employees to complete a comprehensive review of high-capacity wells in such a short period of time is unreasonable. Fourth, I'd like to say that limiting the DNR's rulemaking authority is also a serious problem that is part of 302. It restricts their toolkit. They are unable to meet changes that occur. SB 310 was put together 10 years ago. Certainly the landscape has changed in those 10 years. The DNR needs to have the authority and the ability to address current situations as they arise. I find myself asking why. Why would our legislature want to pass a law that limits the DNR's ability to carry out its constitutional responsibilities? What is the motivation behind 302? Certainly this legislation is not serving the vast majority of Wisconsin citizens. To limit environmental review to groundwater extraction and in turn surface water protection is not in the best interest of Wisconsinites. Wisconsinites like to swim, to boat, to sail, to hunt, even fish standing on water that is frozen in 20-degree below zero weather. The roots of the public trust doctrine reach back to the founding of the Northwest Territories. The waters between the Mississippi and the St. Lawrence were to be common and forever free. The changes proposed in SB 302 that changed Wisconsin Statute 281 put every body of water in this state in jeopardy, taking away the DNR's ability to thoughtfully consider the environmental impact of proposed high-capacity wells. Last, I'm concerned about individual property rights. Wisconsin citizens have a right to protect their property. I feel that this bill is not only assault on Wisconsin waters, but it's also assault on citizens. Most Wisconsin residents own property they have worked hard to purchase and to maintain. And many from the agricultural areas have spoken today about how they feel about their property. Well, it doesn't just limit itself to those who farm. Those of us that own property that are not farms also feel very tight and connected to our little spaces in this state. Many of these properties are dependent upon groundwater, either because they border water resources or because they pump their drinking water from the underground aquifer. The Lake Beulah versus the Village of East Troy unanimous Supreme Court decision affirmed a citizen's right to protect the property by outlining a procedure to request an environmental review of the proposed high-capacity well that might be coming into their neighborhood. If able to present the DNR with sufficient concrete scientific evidence that the proposed high-capacity well will pose harm to the waters of the state, a citizen may ask the DNR, and the DNR is obliged to grant an environmental review. SB 302 takes this option away. In other words, it takes away the citizens' opportunity to protect their home, their investment, their drinking water, and even their business. Finally, I'd like to say that groundwater has been perceived as a virtually unlimited resource in Wisconsin. However, over the past decade, it has become painfully apparent that this is not the case. In the Central Sands region of Wisconsin, approval and installation of hundreds of agricultural high-capacity wells per year has contributed to substantial depletion of the water levels of the lakes, rivers, and streams. Patrick Lake, Fish Lake, Huron Lake, Pleasant Lake, Chaffee Creek, Carter Creek, Taggart's Creek, I could go on and on. The Little Rocha Creek are all currently threatened by groundwater pumping. I ask you today to kill SB 302, to give local initiatives a chance to manage groundwater, to heighten our state's watch, not relax it, and to protect the waters of Wisconsin, both above and below the ground, and to maintain the DNR's broad authority to manage the waters of the state. Thank you very much.